Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Resource Management Committee and the meeting of Council for Tuesday, the 6th of May. We'll start with the prayer. Almighty and ever-loving God, in whose hands are the rights and hopes of all people, look graciously upon us who govern, guide us so that our councils may be wise and their decisions just. Tuesday, the 6th of May. We'll start with the prayer. Almighty and ever-loving God. Okay, so we'll start with apologies. There's a few today, obviously. Peter had it.
Yes.
Peter Ewan.
Yes. You know.
I guess Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie too. Yeah. Jackie's apology. Jackie rang me to put on an apology.
Oh, okay, yep. Any others? Pretty much it. Declarations of interest.
Do you want to move it for that?
Yeah.
I'll move and second.
Move that.
Move that. Seconded Andy. Declarations of interest.
We'll start on the Monganui.
No. Okay. Give me move a second for that. Right, start the public forum. No public forum today. Confirmation of the minutes. They're quite small minutes. I'll move on the second of Peter.
Move it.
Peter, second Andy. I didn't find any corrections to be made or anything. Is everybody happy with the minutes? Anything coming out of the minutes? Yes, it's all good. Actions list. One, ongoing investigate the delegation and pleas for the WDC regarding the mining operations noise issues consents update councillors. Ongoing, know if anyone want to comment on that. Determine the timelines for a new updated flood protection bylaw. It's ongoing. And then present a paper documenting the pressures on Lake Canary and the potential responses.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just give you a bit of an update on the bylaw matter?
Yep.
So look, this is the way it's shaping up with the bylaw, because we always had a bylaw and it expired. So there's some generic things that the bylaw needs to have for backs and assets across the West Coast, like you can't dig into them without permission, things like that. And so we need to get that in play. But more specifically, the current geotechnical drilling and borehole work that's going on in Westport at the moment actually gives us the required information to inform the bylaw around the flood banks in Westport. And that's why we're holding off at the moment and bring this bylaw back to you, because we want that geotech information up there, because that actually speaks to some of the controls around the bylaws that we want in and around those banks. So that's just by way of, it's not that we're not working on it, we are, and it's to do with the geotechnical testing. And as many of you know, the drilling rigs up in Westport at the moment, and the geotechs are up there digging the holes and doing the analysis over the next month. Thanks.
Any comments? The other one's present a paper documenting the pressure on Lake Canary and the potential responses due to the subdivision and stuff. Just a useful piece of information. The deepest point of Lake Canary is 68 metres below sea level. A lot of people don't realise how deep it is, but it's a pretty incredible bit of Planning and TTP report. Oh, moves action list. Alan?
Yeah.
Seconded, Chris? Yeah. Move on. There's no chair's report today. Okay, planning TTP, Joe.
Morning, councillors. Just noting that with Jocelyn Allen leaving, I've picked up the role of Group Manager Regulatory and Policy for the next couple of months, and Claire Brown has picked up the Group Manager Office of the Chief Executive role for the next couple of months. So please bear with us both as we are getting up to speed with our new portfolios. I've also got all the managers, relevant managers here supporting me today, just in case, because there were things that I may not be able to answer. So in the planning and TTT report, essentially what we're saying is that both the air plan review and the coastal plan review are tracking along well. We're comfortable with the progress that we've got on those. And the next question will be when and how we're going to consult on the issues and options reports. That is an option that we're choosing to do or recommending to do. So they'll be coming to council in the near future for discussion around a proposed approach to consultation on those and a final report. In the total mobility space, there's been a few little glitches around the card manufacturing and getting those up and running and workable, but we understand that they should be just about right. So I think we are still aiming for a go live time of late May. So later this month, we are hoping to be able to go live on the total mobility cards. You will have seen in your emails that we have done a submission on the Westland District Council long-term plan. We're also developing submissions on the long-term plans for Grey and Buller as well. So over the next, pretty much over the next month, you will receive copies of those for comments as well.
Sorry, Joe, could I just add to that, councillors, in discussions with the chair, what we thought would be in order when we find out the dates of the hearings for those LTPs in the 3 districts is myself and the chair and the relevant constituent councillors could actually go to those hearings and talk to the submissions. So we'll let you know when those dates are for Buller, Grey and Westland. And if any of you can make it, then yeah, that'd be great, so that we can have a combined constituent councillor, chair and chief executive present speaking to those submissions. I know that this is the first time, I think, but please, I'm sure other councillors have been here longer than may tell me otherwise, but certainly in the last few years, it's the first time we've submitted on a district council's long-term plan, let alone annual plans. But around the country, it is quite normal practice, and don't think it's just a negative thing. We actually want to support some of our districts and some of the initiatives that we're doing, because they are doing some really good work. There are some areas of emphasis that we do want to comment on and see if we can influence the resourcing and budgeting across the next 10 years on those areas that that we interface on. Thank you.
That's the comment there. It'd be good if the council's got to see the letters before you send them. Because you're dealing council to council for a lot of stuff, so it would be nice just to see in case they've got some themselves. You know, the Westport people, the Westport long-term plan and stuff, you know, it's all helpful stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and I need to acknowledge that the Westland one was actually a short turnaround time when we sent it to you. We are aiming to have longer turnaround times for the next 2. We've got a longer lead in for these ones. We should be there. Just noting there's a couple of reports there just for your information. And on TTPP, essentially the committee is sort of in a holding pattern waiting for the information while the hearings panel is busy drafting the recommendations reports, and they should be coming to the committee by the end of August. That's it from me. Yep.
Any questions for Joe? I've just got a couple. Not having a go at anybody. I just, for the record, the airplane roadmap and the other plan, is there roughly how many man hours are involved in these things, just so people know? Max might know or something, like you see it's spaced out over 2 years.
So it's through you, Chair, and obviously on staff.
Okay.
So it's currently 2 full-time staff working on, well, one individually at each one.
Or one of each one, so
Yes.
for 2 years.
Yeah, Yeah, so it's quite significant, which is actually less than some other organisations have on it. So they're doing quite significant work. And with the coastal, there's it's more like 1.5, and then with the air it's just 1. So it's actually quite impressive what they're doing with the resources they've got. So,
Yeah, no, it's just when people ask us, it's just nice for us to know what's going on, you know, like you say, well, you've got one person for 2 years to do that. You know, it's a significant chunk of work, I fully understand that, so. Thanks. Any other comments for the?
Just at the airplanes, when do they run out? When is the times?
Probably real, ran out the other day. Yeah. Same with the coastal plan,
They
wasn't
both run out.
yeah, both.
They're both out of date.
Yeah, okay, so look, what I can tell you is plans have a life of 10 years under the RMA and they have to be reviewed. The coastal plan dates from 2000 and
They're both 01.
01 or 02.
Yeah.
And so we're a lot out of date. Yeah, a lot.
Are there any
which means a lot more work, obviously.
repercussions from that?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Occasionally, the Ministry for the Environment, sort of sparks up and says, "Hey, you're out of date. What are you doing?" But generally, no. There's no sort of central, government thing that does it unless there's a big community issue, that's putting the pressure on. But what I would say is that, irrespective of any sort of sanction that you're going to get, out-of-date plans actually are a cost in our communities because they don't reflect the current situation. And often it's not that we're adding more, it's actually efficient and effective regulation that's fit for purpose in today's day and age. So I can tell you from experience, out-of-date plans cost the community more and put them to work they don't need to do if there was modern contemporary plans through compliance and consents and all those sorts of things. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is if you look at the history of the TTPP and the Order in Council that came from government, that started off with a group of ratepayers saying we want local government reform, and then the government of the day and the Local Government Commission said, no, we're not going to reform local government on the West Coast, but we want you to be efficient and effective in your local government services. And by the way, your district plans of all 3 districts are out of date, so we'll make the regional council do that. So that's where that came from, actually, by way of history.
So the recommendation for the committee resolved to receive the report. There's no more questions.
Just before we leave there,
Yep.
it's just that I can see a similar sort of thing happening with the airplane. They might say you've got to do it for the whole region. And
I think we do it now.
So just to confirm, we do have an operative air plan and coastal plan, and it's both of those plans that Max's team is reviewing at the moment. At the same time, we're working on that to bring forward new plans on both those air and coastal. The only other one that's outstanding for us in the RMA context, that is the big one, which is the land and water plan. And the government has asked us to stall any work on land and water plans throughout the country pending their RMA reforms, and are asking us to probably start thinking about starting those processes by 2027.
thank you.
Any questions? So, someone to move the report? Chris? Yeah, second, Alan. Move on. Report. It's,
Let's move well.
She as well.
Thank you. Mostly really this is giving you an update on the consents that have been processed between January and March. There were 47 applications lodged. of which 10 were returned as incomplete and 27 have been granted as at March, noting that those 27 had all been granted within the statutory timeframe. You've got the information on consents processed by activity, and you've got a full list of all of the consents and site visits that we have been undertaking. I'm not going to go into those in any detail. Of note really is that we have some hearings. We have already held the first hearing on the alluvial gold mining activities in Waimea Creek. That was held on the 11th of April, and we have some upcoming for mineral sand mining on the 3rd of June. These hearings are, the reason I'm highlighting them is because preparing for hearings is a significant undertaking, takes a lot of staff time to prepare for these. So they're quite an impact on our workload as a team. So other than that, there is trend data and some information on types of consents, which I'm going to leave for you to read at your leisure.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one comment? We've got one of them. TIGA was a very big hearing for us, and then obviously it was appealed, and we got that consent granted at mediation through the parties. Another very big consent is Western Mineral Sands. I think there's 91 or 92 submitters for and against, and that's a big hearing for us. And if you haven't already, you'll receive an email just letting you know when that hearing's starting if you ever want to attend that hearing. So that's a big hearing, and as Joe said, Agri Partners in the Waimea with the gold mining, as well as Western Mineral Sands, is taking a lot of our staff time, but it's the right thing for us to do. Is to have those big hearings. Thanks.
It's a hearing for the one down in Mananui.
That's Western Mineral Sands.
Yeah, and that's going to be in Puketiki or something.
Yes, it is. It'll be at the RSA in Hoki.
Just a question. I'm getting a lot of complaints about the hold-ups with resource consents, the consents being declined, the consents going to Wellington to be processed. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, I'm happy to start. I'm sure that Carol will choose to step in too. There has been a conscious decision that we are choosing to decline or defer because of incomplete information, consents up front, applications up front. It's much clearer for everybody that they get declined because they don't have enough information up front, rather than we bring them in and then they sit around being on hold while people are chasing around trying to get information. So we are trying, as we've said before, trying to become a modern regulatory organisation, and this is part of that, is being really clear right up front what information is required to process a consent. And yes, we have been using consultants for a number of reasons. The first reason is to upskill our staff and upskill applicants on what is expected to process a consent. And the other reason is because we've had some staff away. We've had staff away on overseas trips, and we've got one new staff member who's still coming up to speed. So we are utilising consultants. I understand that it's standard practice through councils that they run on a certain staffing level, and if they have a peak, they utilise consultants to help process consent.
My impression is you're making the system too complicated. We've actually, the alluvial mining industry has been going here for 40 years. The effects are well known. You're wanting to reinvent the wheel all over again. You should have a very standard application and conditions for alluvial gold mining operation. Instead of it's going to Wellington and they're getting a whole lot of stupid questions asked, the size of their water pumps. They don't even know the area. They're going off aerial photographs, and there's all sorts of stupid questions coming back. The thing needs to be brought into house with your experienced people here into a very simple form, which a push of a button, you can print out the consent and issue it. The whole thing is just getting out of control.
So we have been in the process of updating our forms. And we've been doing that in partnership with Potini Ngāi Tahu under the Manawhaka Honua Rohi review. And we actually invited a number of consultants to come and hear about our new approach and our new forms and how we were going to do that. And the consultants chose not to attend.
Oh,
So,
just
Yes.
one further comment. When I first got involved with this council application, there was one person who did all the consenting. He did all the compliance. One person. It was so simple then. I think we've gone backwards by employing all these people and making things complicated. It's got to go back to that simple, cost-effective.
For all due respect, the Catchment Board days was prior to Resource Management Act, which introduced a whole new regime. So I think the rule behoves the miners to take it on board too. They've got to move with the times and try and upskill themselves too. So I think a joint process between council and miners, which is what that recent Waimea thing was incredibly successful, I thought. Then if we can carry that sort of process on, we'll jointly come up with a much more streamlined and workable process that will suit both parties.
Francois?
Yeah, I think a good place to start might be if we could agree on a good set of conditions. Because I think conditions bounce around a bit between the consultants, the applicant, council, ourselves, debating different conditions. So I think a good place to start is if we could all get together and go, okay, so these are the conditions for alluvial gold mining, stuff like that. I think it's a good place to start. I do, Alan's made some good points, but also I agree that we've come a long way since then days, and we actually have to change the way we think and the way we operate. But I'm sure we can get to a middle ground by making it more streamlined. From my perspective, it seems to be one of the conditions that we're pushing back from us.
So we're suggesting we should need to have a workshop with some consultants and some gold miners. Maybe that's an action point, Carol. So
Yes, I'm in absolute agreement with Francois, is that we need to find a collaborative way through here. And we can do that. There is three parties involved. There's the regional council, there's Potini Ngāi Tahu, and then there's the miners. And we all need to get into a workshop like we did, the other week, which was highly successful and talk about and try and reach agreements on some standard conditions. But it's not just the miners, it's also the consultants that are acting for them, that we've invited them to come in and they haven't come.
right.
Yeah.
So we'll chase that up. But I think the frustrating with them is when the letter to the client comes back and says you have to start again, rather than you need to tweak this or tweak that. This, from what I've seen, there's no helpful information comes back to say this is what you need to do. Basically, it's just no, mate, not enough info. Start again, and that's not helpful.
Yeah, I'm like Alan, I get quite a few calls about certain issues, but you start talking them through the processes that we're trying to get to and where we're moving from to where we want to get to. They can understand, but I think it's just a matter of talking them through the whole thing. We can't operate like we did back in the day. Unfortunately, we can't. So we've got to move with the times. And
No, I know, but
it's about trying to get it right now.
because you're getting bigger, deeper, bigger disturbed areas, it's all understandable, but it's just a matter of people knowing what needs to be done. Don't know what you need to do.
Can I also offer the comment that in the last few months, there has been a number, and one in particular that I can think of alluvial gold mining consent application that was accepted under Section 88 and processed without delay and in a completely satisfactory manner. So this isn't all of them. There are applications where they're meeting the required inputs into the consent for lodgement. And in that case, I can clearly remember the applicant actually came in pre-application, sat down with the consent officers with the draft application and said, is everything here? And they said, no, if you could just change this and do this and do this. And they went away and did it, then lodged and everything was fine. So that's a far better way of approaching it than just throwing the application in and then getting disgruntled without talking to us. Thank you.
Yeah, the other part of the whole issue is the fact that gold price is so high. Everyone's scrambling right now, right? And to be perfectly honest and fair, where we're trying to get to in terms of the applications doesn't fit the guys that have been mining here for. So, and I can understand their frustration. So we've got to work with them guys to get them across the line a bit better. The new guys coming in, fair to say, or coming in, don't know us, so they go through that. And they cross the T's and dot the I's. However, the guys have been mining here for a number of years, of applying the way they used to, and finding that it's not working now that way. So how do we help them guys get it across the line rather than just send it back and go, get your consulting to do this and that? So I can get the frustration, Alan. I understand it, but we've got to try and figure out a way forward under the new conditions.
Taking as an action point, Dan. We'll organise a workshop for consultants and interested parties. Get the consents, compliance. And we've got to understand too, like there's a lot of miners out there, as the council got enough time for guys, they've got on the street. So that's the other problem. I mean, you've got probably getting bombarded. But anyway, I can sense the frustration.
And through the chair, it is helpful if people know that they can come and see the consents team and sit with them and find this stuff out.
Through the chair as well, but if you have a look on the website, the invitation is there.
Yeah.
To come in and have a talk to the consenting officer so that you can actually, with a bit of luck, eliminate a lot of the problems before you have the backwards and forwards, rejection, fix it, no, reject, another requisition, backwards and forwards. On the website, it says you come in and see consenting officers, and I think if I was a miner, I would be taking my consultant with me and nothing at all out now, and eliminating a lot of the problems before you even put the application in.
Pretty difficult to consult on the North Island. Or the processor.
No, the consultant I'm talking about is the miner's consultant.
Yes.
Yeah, he goes in with it.
Okay, these mining consultants, they're pretty professional people. They've been doing these consents for a long time. They know their stuff. And they're the ones that are getting frustrated. As far as the comment about the RMA, well, the RMA's turned out to be a bit of a disaster. And that's why the government is now trying to change it back to the situation that I was talking about, where you can simplify the situation where probably one person can deal with it and get it done. The country's gone backwards ever since the RMA came in, and the government now is trying to change that.
Comments? So the received report, consent court recommended resolve to receive the report. Moving, councillor moving, seconder, angry. Motion. Compliance council referred to the report. That you first or
That's me
you too?
noting that Chris is here to answer any purely questions. So again, this has a long list of all of the visits that have been undertaken by the team. So I'm not going to talk about any of those in detail, just noting that there has been 147 site visits between January and March. That's quite a significant number. 51 monitoring, 36 mining, 41 to investigate complaints, and 10 on territorial authorities and 9 on dairy farms. Of those, there were 16 non-compliances that occurred, and those are listed there for your review. We are receiving mining work programs and bonds, and we received 10, and we have a number of those still in progress, and 3 of them have been approved as complete. We've received 2 mining bonds, and there are no bonds recommended for release. The rest I will leave up to you to read at your leisure.
I've just got one question, it's from the other one. Liddell Construction to discharge contaminates to air, namely dust associated with blades, brazen glass and road and rail structures throughout New Zealand. What actually happens to the paint? Do they have to collect all that stuff up? Or was it pristine up in the river?
I can't answer that.
So can I, so I know, listen, you know, when Kiro NZTA, you know, sandblast, you know, the bridges and that, they tend to encapsulate it with some netting and stuff and catch it.
Yeah.
You know, so it doesn't just fall into the river, and then that's how they manage that. Yeah, if you've ever seen, you know, when they're doing that, they sort of encapsulate it with that netting stuff. Yeah.
Chair, just for a bit of knowledge, we have dealt with one of these recently where they didn't carry out the precautions to prevent material falling into a riverbed. Obviously, we carried out course protection of that as well.
Excuse me, that's pretty nasty stuff. So we'll move that report.
Just to note that 147 trips in 73 days, that's 2 a day, that's pretty good going. That's a pretty good effort.
I'd like to comment on the compliance and getting a few complaints about the compliance team coming onto mine sites with following practice procedure. A couple of them, you brought the police with you to get in, to get access. Do you want to comment?
Through the chair, sorry, was that?
Coming onto the sites with the police escort.
Not on mine sites, Mr. Bigfield.
No, any sites.
So we have had a couple of occasions where we have carried out our duties under the RMA with the assistance of police. Yes.
Got one complaint where you turned up in heavy rain.
With police.
Yes.
Incorrect.
I followed up.
Yeah.
I followed up with you, Daryl.
Any other questions on this one?
Was it?
Any other questions for this paper? We're
I followed up with Daryl.
with Daryl. You want that, Daryl? Yep. So is that legal second? Quarterly report, biosecurity report. The recommendation is that please report the progress on the annual biosecurity operational plan.
Yeah, so I'll just go through the report quickly with you. This is the third report on the biosecurity annual plan. We've got 35 deliverables there, 32 are on track, just highlighting there's one there with minor delays. That's some marine pest surveillance we were going to do in Westport, just due to some weather issues there. We've had to delay to late Q4. That should still happen. And the 2 red ones, it's one, the biosecurity roadshow. So councillors wanted us to do some more community engagement on biosecurity. We're still going to do that, but just trying to be a bit more efficient with people's time. We're going to do that in conjunction with our State of the Environment report. We're going to do a roadshow, Westport, Hokitika, Grey and South Westland as well. And that will be hydrology, biosecurity and environmental science. So wrapping it all into one. Couple key points here that I thought might be of interest to you. The team have found a few new to region pest plants, including climbing asparagus, which is quite significant up in Northland. So we're working on getting rid of that one. We're also seeing more finds of woolly nightshade. So this is a plant that actually is toxic to stock and quite damaging to the agricultural industry, but also
influences people's health as well. So something we want to keep out of the region. Team are working pretty hard on trying to eradicate that plant. We've had 90 sites mapped this year of green waste illegal dumping. That's a new initiative that we're doing and just trying to understand where people are dumping plants, because that's where we see them being spread from. And we take action, either pass it on to compliance or to the district councils. Most of these sites are in riverbeds, which is a real problem because then the rivers rise and it spreads down the river. There's a map there on page 53 of where we're finding those. You see quite a lot of them are in grey and up into Westport as well. The team attended the Okarito Gorsebusters event, which is a really great event. 70 volunteers from around the country attend that and work to protect the ecosystem of Okarito. So we just support them at that event. We've also had some good engagement this year with our Clean Check Dry advocate. She's been around to all of the lakes, educating boat users on reducing the spread of pest plants. You might have heard in the news there's the golden clam, which they found up in the North Island. So that's something we really don't want to reach the South Island. A huge pest in terms of hydroelectric power and things like that. So educating people, you know, stop it at Picton, don't bring it across. So working closely with Tasman and Marlborough district councils on that initiative there. We'll also attend the West Coast Employment Expo, which is happening this month, end of this month. We'll get the hydro and environmental science teams to attend that one as well. There's a map which you may have some interest in on page 58, just showing the spread of eradication species that we're finding. And you'll note most of them are in the Buller region. That is not likely because most of them are in Buller. It's because that's where most of the effort has been spent in finding these. The Department of Conservation used to employ a weed buster who would go around to private properties and identify eradication species. They've provided us all that data, which means we've got really good information on Buller, but we don't have great information on Greymouth and Hokitika South. It's unfortunate they're no longer funding that role, but that's been really great in terms of us identifying things early and being able to stop the spread. There's a bit on biocontrol there as well, just showing that we've introduced some Tradescantia beetles, which are collected from the Tasman district, working with the council there, and working to use biocontrol to, you know, reduce the amount that we have to spend on people time, get the bugs to do it for us. And there was a request from South Westland to investigate whether the ragwort plume moth has been spreading there. So we're just encouraging farmers there that actually spraying ragwort kills the biocontrol as well. So at certain times of year, it's actually better to let the biocontrol do its thing and not spray. It's just some images there of the staff checking to see if the plume moth is there, and they have found that. It's great.
That's the moth, is it?
Yeah, for the ragwort. Yeah, we've also got beetles for Tradescantia and a spot fungus as well.
Is that working down in Haas?
So with that.
Is that moth working on the ragwort down in Haas?
So they found when they first introduced it, it was working really well, and then they sort of saw it, you know, stop working, and I think that's to do with people spraying the plants. And so Landcare Research have suggested that if we advocate to farmers at certain times of year to reduce the spraying, if the moth is there, so it's good to actually check that the moth is there before you stop spraying, otherwise the ragwort will take over. Yeah.
The chair, Shanti, did in the Buller there you had monitoring spots, and was that funded through DOC?
So that map there is the weed dump site. So on page 58 is the non-eradication species. Yeah, so that was the weed buster.
Yeah, was that funded by DOC?
It was funded by DOC, yeah. Really good initiative. We are exploring at the moment.
Why was it cut?
Why was it cut? Because it's private land, and DOC have made a national move to only work on DOC land now.
We've got a lot of DOC land on the West Coast.
Yep, so they're still doing all the work on the DOC land, but they're not doing any work on private land anymore.
So they got no other records from further south?
So the way DOC works, Daryl might be able to comment here, is it's really dependent on the district. And so the district office in Westport was very proactive in weeds, whereas in South Westland, they were more focused on pest animals. So they invested quite a lot of money into weeds, which has given us really great data, whereas the South Westland office didn't prioritise that.
Can I just make a comment, councillors? Look, you know, it's no secret, you know, what's happening across the government departments, whether it be the Conservation or whether it be the Crown Research Institutes with NIWA. A lot of them are suffering, you know, significant budget reductions. And the regional sector, not just us, but the whole regional sector has to be careful here that as the government retreats and doesn't invest in some of these things, that we don't, as ratepayer funds and just go in and pick all that work up as an unfunded mandate that we think we need to do. So another example that I'd give you across the country is reduction in hydrometric rainfall and flow stations from NIWA, or not maintaining them to the standards they used to, and then thinking that we just have to go in and do that. Now that's really important for us because some of it's flood warning, but there's a growing concern in the regional sector that we don't just, as government retreats from some of its programs that was funding, that we don't just go and commit ratepayer money and just go and pick all that work up. So we need to watch that very carefully. And if we are going to bring forward programs like that, then that has to be subject to an annual plan process that councillors need to decide on consciously whether they're going to do that or not. Thanks.
Yeah, they're like that purple pampas, that's spreading real bad down South West.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're in control of it.
We are working on that. We've received some, there's a property where someone has planted quite a lot and it is spreading through to Okarito as well. So we are working on that with DOC. We held a quarterly meeting with DOC and all of the officers come, South Westland, Grey, Hokitika and Buller, which is really great initiative, and we sort of make sure we prioritise things. And purple pampas is on the radar for South Westland. We're noting the same thing.
And would that be the riverbeds would be the responsibility of the DOC?
Most of the time, but not all of the time. Some are limbs, some are iwi land, some have some private areas. So we just work with the landowner to. DOC do some spraying up the riverbeds in key locations, but yeah, budget constraints.
It's something where you need to combine it all, though, isn't it? I mean, you've only got to have one. Used to be years ago, the ragwort, if one farmer didn't spray, then everybody copped it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's actually a whole concerted effort, you might as well not bother.
Exactly, yeah, there's definitely a point where you go, we're sort of seeing that as we're collecting more data and we've got this really good GIS dashboard, that is a point where we go, okay, this species got to this level, it's gone, we can't, the effort that we're putting into this is not sustainable, we can't do that anymore, so we have to move to biocontrol or something else. There's no biocontrol for pampas in New Zealand.
Yeah, because if just one patch is controlled in the riverbed, it's a waste of time, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of seed in
That
that.
needs to be a catchment approach, really. Oh,
A few people up the coast road, please, they're not doing that.
but it's really spreading. Every time I drive there, I'm like, oh, look at it. Yeah, yeah. But that's one of those species where we've just had to go, okay, yeah, we don't have the resources to do it anymore.
That was a big thing in Karamea too, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we've got in our regional pest management plan, we've got 2 zones where we've said, you know, these are the species we're going to focus on these areas, Banana Passion Fruit, Karamea and Coast Road, but
Yep.
both those communities.
Any other questions for Sharty?
To the chair, just going back on page 63, we've got it's only an interesting, maintaining wildlife habitat sites and 4 of them across 7 catchments. Just a little bit interested. Do you know off the top of your head what the
Yes, a lot of them are in Bulla. I don't have all of them off the top of my head. The Ora Waiti, Mokahanui was one. There was another in Karamea. Yeah, so that was a Jobs for Nature project, and basically all of the investment went in Jobs for Nature, and we're just doing sort of a minimal keeping the area free. There's quite a few sites which we were able to get rid of all the willow, so we're just making sure that it's not catchments.
So the willow's the biggest problem with the whitecoat catchment areas.
So it's one problem. I don't know about the biggest problem. Yeah, and in some of these catchments, it is an issue because it clogs up the river, depending on the species. But it's crack willow.
Great willow.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna move it for that.
Yep, I'll move that.
Second. Moving. All those in favour? You want to move the public exclusion there or wait till we do the other meeting? There's not much in the public exclusion.
No, I think it'd be better if we hold it over and do it all together.
Is it possible, just because I've got staff, no? Is it possible to do that now?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
General business.
Oh, general business. Yeah, any general business for the resource management? Just going to public exclusion.
Yep.
We'll move for all the right reasons. We've got the public exclusion. Recommendation, the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely agenda items 11 to 13, all inclusive.
Yep.
Move up second, Alan. Right. Okay, welcome everybody to the meeting in council, 6th of May. Call for any apologies. We've got Peter Haddock, Peter Ewan. Any others? We're gonna move, yeah.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Mark, move it. Second, Andy. Declaration of interest. Along the way. No public forum, deputations. Well, the confirmation of minutes. Last week, 1st of April. Is directions to be made on the minutes?
Let's see.
Right.
Never move.
Remove and second, move Alan, probably Chris. Actually, coming from.
That's something I'll move.
Who?
That's Alan on my,
Yeah, you can't move it.
not moving him.
You're gonna move the world.
No.
Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, coming from the minutes?
No. Great.
You sure? Okay, sorry. No. Action point. Got, action one's completed, activity two's going on about consultants costs and action three's completed. Any update on when we're gonna get action two? Yeah. Action point two, which was, email Mr. Cummings about the cost of analysts comparing council's previous reliance on consultants with its current in-house staffing approach to demonstrate public safety.
Didn't talk about that being a year in that.
Year end, which is July.
Yeah. Then you come back at that stage.
Yep, all right. We'll move it for that.
No,
Mr. Chair, we finished the conversation. I need to acknowledge that councillor Ewan doesn't actually want the action point regarding the Bailey Bridge is removed. I would recommend that it is removed from council because it's moved to the Regional Transport Committee. However, I just needed to acknowledge to you, given councillor Ewan's absence, he sent us an email saying he thinks it should remain.
Any other thoughts from anybody else? For the Bailey Bridge action point tonight? A bit out of our hands really, isn't it?
On the hands of, yeah,
Yeah.
not really our decision, is it?
No, he can keep it in his hands. He's gonna go to the transport committee.
Yeah, I mean, it's my belief. We have sent the letter. The letter's gone to MBTA and to the minister. So I believe from the council meetings perspective, it's finished. I just needed to voice what councillor Ewan had said.
Everybody else happy with that?
I don't know whether it gets finished until we hear back from them. Have we heard back from them yet?
No.
No, no.
And if you choose to keep it on here, you can keep it on here and we'll make sure that you get a paper informing you of what happens, or you can choose to pass it back and leave it with the Regional Transport Committee. That's up to you.
Going, isn't it?
I thought they came back to us and they said they didn't want us storing Bailey bridges over here because of the climate.
That was the last information we got from NZTA over email, and then we were requested to send an official letter.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done via the Regional
So
Transport.
I understood too.
So it should really be ongoing, shouldn't it?
Yeah,
I'll
I think,
leave it here till the letter comes back.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, move on to technical collections. Just move on. Andy seconded. Reports. No chair's report because the chair's like, hospital. Reports, updated joint e-reach capacity between King and Code. Whakawhakarana. Let's get your tune.
Yeah.
Give it pronouncing the name for you.
Good morning, councillors. So just before I get into the paper, I'll just make a comment that the Mana Whakahono Orohi agreement is directly relevant to the conversation we've had at RMC around standard conditions. And that is absolutely part of this review and the need for standard conditions for efficient consenting, effective consenting, and that's working with the Tini Ngāi Tahu, and the goal is to also work with industry. So we talked about the alluvial miners as one industry, but we'll also be looking to work across other industries as well. The paper that you've got in front of you is a joint paper between Tini Ngāi Tahu and the Regional Council. It's providing you with a high-level overview of the process that we've undertaken for this review and our next steps. The Mana Whakahono Orohi agreement for particularly the new councillors, it is our partnership agreement with our iwi partners under the Resource Management Act. And we've had this in place since 2020. And we also recognised from the New Zealand Planning Institute award in 2023 for our planning mission with our iwi partners. So this review is important to maintain alignment with any of the legislative changes, which I'll talk about in the RMA reform, including the fast track changes as well. But it also shows that Regional Council are performing a genuine commitment to our partnership with our iwi partners and also sustainable regional economic development. So the review that we've gone through to date is a light touch review. So there are no substantive changes that are being proposed in this review. It's not about changing the intent of the document or why we signed up to it in the first place, but it's looking at opportunities to make it work better and focusing on practical implementation and clarifying roles and expectations. So it's very timely to do this review at the moment. Daryl, other councillors have talked about the further RMA changes on the horizon. Now I've looked into what the signalling of that RMA changes will be. Minister Bishop has put in a cabinet paper, which has been signed off by cabinet and also through the expert advisory group, that the Mana Whakahono Orohi agreements will remain as under the RMA. So it is very timely that we do review this and make sure that whatever we do change is relevant and retained in the resource management system. The other thing to mention is that we've got a workshop set up on the 20th of May to go through specifically what changes we are proposing from the original documentation. And this will be the opportunity for you as councillors to
to see what the change is being proposed, why it's being proposed, what are the benefits to changing it versus keeping the old wording, and what will be the intended outcomes if we do change the form. So following completion of that workshop, we'll present a paper in June for you to approve. And then following that, we'll be looking at an implementation and monitoring program of work to make sure that we are following through on the commitments that we're making, that we're working with Te Ngātahu to make sure that our standard conditions are set up, our templates are all right, and that we can work towards more efficient, more streamlined consenting. And that will result in, you know, ongoing sustainable economic development for our region, because ultimately it is about the people, the environment, and our economy, and capitalising on, you know, the long list of economic growth opportunities that we've got in front of us, trying not to get in the way of that. So happy to answer any questions, but at the moment this paper is more just outlining our process, our next steps, and reminding you that there's a workshop on the 20th of May to go through specific proposed changes.
Any questions, anyone?
All I would ask is that at the workshop is that there's a glossary of terms.
Mhm.
So that we understand it, because that was our biggest problem when I first come on the council and read the first thing. I had no idea what was going on, basically. I've got no problem with the Maori language and that, but I need to understand it. And if we're going to be making workshops and things, we need to be able to understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, I've just got a question. Are we going to still require an iwi sign off on all consents?
Should hope so.
Yeah, can you clarify what you mean by EV sign off? Do we already do that through our previous mana whakahono agreement that we signed up to in 2020?
You've got an iwi sign off requirement in resource consent process. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Are you going to retain it?
The intention is yes, that will be retained.
So in other words, any resource consent requires an iwi sign off. That wasn't really my understanding when I signed that.
Okay, well, we can bring some clarification of that to the workshop. And
I would like to talk about that in the workshop.
I think you're right. I think it's a sign off, Alan. It's we're engaged through the process, and we feedback on the commentary, we feedback on the application. The decision is still made by the consents team and council. We don't make a decision on it.
My understanding of the agreement was more of a consultation document rather than a statutory requirement.
It's statutory requirement, but the process is that working with the team is that we engage together around the issues and agree on conditions or whatever it is. That's always been the case. We don't have the ability to stop it.
I think if we manage to,
That's not what Daryl told me.
if we manage to get the consent thing sorted out with all this stuff, then surely we're working on the same page. That one, well, the problem at the moment is we're not all working on the same page.
Yeah, I wonder if I could comment at this point. The team are saying, the collective team is saying that the mana whakahono document is pretty fit for purpose, just needs some minor amendment. But where I think we've probably, you know, a bit of a challenge is the implementation of what the intent of the document was meaning, and how do we do that efficiently and effectively, especially through our consenting function. And when I look back into the history of, you know, when this was signed, Councillor Birchfield, 2021, that coincided with two things. It coincided with COVID and, you know, the whole challenging time around all of that, but it also coincided with you know, a bit of a unstable leadership inside this council and changing of management and all those sorts of things, which really meant that the work that was required upon signing to work out an efficient and effective way of implementing the document and the agreement with Te Ngātahu and stakeholders did not happen. And that, I think, is the key piece of work that we need to do now. And I think some of the frustration that we're hearing this morning is due to that COVID and the leadership and then the implementation work not being done. And that's the work that we really need to lean in on once we adopt the document. Thanks.
Just going back, when I spoke to you, Daryl, probably 12 months ago, I said, what happens if you don't get an iwi sign off? And you said it has to go to hearing. Is that correct?
If there is a determination of limited notified, and there's no, for instance, and there's no, and iwi do not give their written approval, then yes, it proceeds to a hearing. That is correct.
So that's a statutory.
That comes from the RMA. It doesn't come from one. It comes from the RMA.
There's no statutory sign off in the RMA. The only one who got a statutory sign off is Fish and Game.
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure that's entirely correct.
You know, it's not, but I think that at the end of the day, Alan, what we're trying to achieve here is to get to a point where that doesn't happen. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to a point where that sort of shit doesn't happen. Otherwise, all that will happen is that everything will be going through bloody court and we'll go nowhere fast. So as you know, we're advocates for this in this space, and we're doing everything we can to get things across the line. However, we need to make sure they're done and the compliance is right. That's all it's about. But if you decide to challenge it, then I'm going to challenge it, and we'll go backwards.
I just want consents, the West Coast people, to be processed and granted in a timely manner.
Yep.
At a minimum cost, because that's one of the basic things for our economy. We can't create wealth. We don't get these consents through the process. You get people out generating wealth. And I just don't want anyone putting a fly in the ointment.
I 100% agree with you, but in saying that, we ain't going to lower our standards to get a miner that's, I won't say that word, for some miners, we're not going to lower our standards just to get the resource consent granted out. They've got to comply, right? And the conditions these days are different than the old days. And if we work together to get them across the line, the same thing's going to happen. However, there's some compliance stuff they have to do, Alan, and we want to work with them to help them get it done. But going down this track is not going to help it one iota. You'll make it work.
Well, I think we'll just leave it to the workshop, eh?
Yeah, we'll have it at the workshop, Francois. 20th of May.
Yeah, we'll leave it. And then we'll do we'll move on, eh? Oh, you've got to move and second if that one. Move, Mark. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Ashley, for your first paper to the
Yep.
council. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Move on to Westport All Resolved, Calipari Scale. It's recommended that the committee resolve to receive the report, like the endorsement committee, proposal transfer of debt unable to be recovered from the Crown. I was just wondering, do we want to do this all in one lump or do you want to do it in separate?
So just noting, Mr. Chairman, Chantal Mills is online and whether she wants to say any opening remarks in the paper.
Say this, Chantal?
I can speak very briefly. So this paper comes off the back of having the Wanganui Rating District, the Westport Joint Committee meeting, and submitted the paper that's in front of you, and the committee voted in favour of having the difference between the cost of the project and what was submitted by the government. They voted in favour of that difference being put to the general rate or the targeted rate for Westport.
Any questions?
Are there any questions?
So the recommendation that council has received the report. Note the endorsement by the Westport Rating District Joint Committee for the proposal of transfer of debt unable to recover from the Crown, which is 1.287 million plus interest for the construction of the flood defences at Auburn Island and the Kawatiri scale on rating district's loan balance. Number 3 is endorse the funding shortfall regarding the combined immediate urgent works completed at Organs Island and Kawatiri scale in the 2023 financial year of 1.2 be transferred to the Westport Rating District loan balance, and this is to be fully funded by a targeted rate of the Westport Rating District in the coming years.
Well, I'd like to comment on that. I actually disagree with that because I think the original catastrophe fund, that was the whole idea of a catastrophe fund, was that was to make up that sort of a shortfall. And if you're then going to ask the rating district to go and repay the catastrophe fund, what's the point of a catastrophe fund? It just goes back and forth. It doesn't get used for it. That all it does is provide a bit of a slush fund until you get enough money to be able to pay that catastrophe fund back. But
that's all it is. That's what happened last time. Because we can't have a catastrophe fund get gobbled up because then there is no catastrophe fund. So all it is the same with when we did the Waiho Milton Others wall. So we use that money to get it going till we sort out the funding. Because otherwise the whole thing sits wide open and nothing happens. The whole thing of a catastrophe is to avert the catastrophe and then sort out the money later. But we need that money for other projects as well. Because the ratepayers can't come up with another $1 million amongst us.
You are correct. The catastrophe fund has to be refunded, has to be repaid.
Where does it say that?
It has to be
I'm interested to know that because I thought the whole idea of catastrophe fund is actually.
Mr. Chairman, Councillor Cole, we can get you the papers and the background and the definitions and the rules and regulations that council has previously adopted on the catastrophe fund. I understand your argument. But the council has decided, and it hasn't changed its view for when that fund was first set up, that it is immediate cash on hand that is not tied up in term deposits and other things and in the investment funds. It's immediate cash on hand that we can go and get $1 million and throw at fixing up something really quick, and then all the debt repayments and other things happens months and months later, especially after we work through insurance and NEMA and all those sorts of things. I understand your argument that or your position that potentially that fund could be just a grant fund that is kept from the general rate, and then as a grant when we have a big flood and a catchment. But the council has made the decision previously that it has to be repaid, and I can give you all the documentation, and we could take that as an action, thanks, to supply that to you, because that is the position of council and that is in our documents.
I'd be interested to see that. Great, because the philosophy behind a catastrophe fund, I thought would have been to overcome a catastrophe at the time, not just to give you a bit of running capital.
Yeah,
to tide you over till you sort out how we're going to pay it.
The problem is, where do you get the $1 million from?
It's $1 million in the first place. How did you get the $1 million in the catastrophe fund?
It came from the government with the selling of the forest.
Supplied $1 million to extra $1 million.
No, the original fund came from when they sold the forestry. When we got our investment money from the government,
$7 million,
whatever it was, they put $1 million of it into a catastrophe fund. The catastrophe fund never came from the ratepayer originals.
Come out of the investment fund. Come out of the investment fund.
I'll move the I'll move the recommendation, 1, 2 and 3.
1, 2 and 3, hold up. Second. Second.
That's your.
I'll second it. I was at the Westport Rating District meeting and they agreed to it, so we've just got to back it up.
Yeah.
Really. They actually unanimously agreed to.
You call the vote?
Was it over?
Used to.
You against it, so you got to mark down. This poll. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, can I just express my thanks to Chantel? Don't underestimate the amount of sleuthing and accounting work to unravel this and a number of other legacy accounting issues around our FUD schemes, such as Rocket, Pogatika, Beach and things like that. So this is another one that's now cleared up and really enables Peter and team to wash up for an annual report and a clear, much clearer set of annual accounts going forward and having all these legacy things hanging around that we didn't know what to do with. So thank you, Chantel, for all your work on this. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Righto. 8.3 non-financial performance reporting, 24/25/43. Stuart.
Sure, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, councillors. Thanks for having me here today. So I'll go through some key takeaways if that's okay to start with, then dive into the detail. Is that okay?
Yep.
So we've set our performance expectations, as you know, in the long-term plan, and in summary, we're really good on them. But the quarter three, this isn't full year performance, it's quarter three, 85% of our targets were met, which is really good. That's a difference from quarter two, because there was a couple of things we didn't do in quarter two. You might recall that our requirements we didn't quite achieve, and flood warning system wasn't fully operational for the whole period. Quarter three, they were. That's where the difference comes from. So yeah, what I can tell you is we're delivering, as you'd expect, to be honest, Mr. Chair. And yeah, that'll just go through it in detail. That's okay. Right, so it's 30 performance measures, as you know, and so it's 25 of which have a quarterly performance report, and 2 of which have a full year performance report. 3 we don't have measures for or targets for this year. That's the difference. So for quarter three, 85% of those targets were met. And that, as I say, is an increase from the previous. End of year performance, we just need to be a bit cautious on the end of year performance because some of the data that were flowing through, obviously, once we failed to deliver our wonders on time, and it's 2 of them, doesn't matter how many we do for the rest of the year, we failed that performance for the full year. So you'll see on the bottom of that report summary, on the first page that I can't tell you exactly where our end of year performance is going to be right now. It's going to be somewhere between 70 and 85% for full year performance. And I'm thinking it's towards the mid or upper of that, but I just need to get all the data in and really validate that data to really give you that confidence that that's what we do.
Mr. Chairman, that validation by Stuart is very important because the auditors have been in the last couple of weeks, EY, it's audit time again, and they want to see they can ask questions and see the evidence for this. So we've got to be able to back it up and validate it.
Sure, thanks, Now. What the auditors have said last year is that we're quite firm, I think is a word, on how we do this reporting these days. So, and this is really strong evidence. Well, we will only pass if there's strong evidence to back up that we're passing. You'd expect that, and that's where the auditors would expect to talk. So that we're continuing that route. So going on to your page 22. So for quarter three, we did the work, as I say, we're doing pretty awesomely on that. And the 2 that we didn't do, well, in effect, that's because the national policy statements on natural hazards and freshwater have just not been released. We committed to doing that work, but external influences mean we can't. And so that's one of the reasons why we're not actually achieving at a higher level. I want to go to number 5 now, if that's okay. So changes to our from quarter 2 performance. So as you know, as I mentioned, the requirements, we didn't process them all in quarter 2. Quarter 3 we have. Measure 13, that's an improvement from last time. Our flood protection or our flood warning system wasn't fully functional in quarter 2. It was in quarter 3, despite the fact that we didn't have floods in that time period, as you are now. Measure 19, as I say, we were expecting in quarter 2 that national policy statement freshwater to be released, and so we were still hopeful of that, but that's not actually being released at this point in time, so we can't deliver that now, and it's still not been released. end of year performance, we're not going to achieve something that's not actually been replaced. Measure 23, just giving you a flag on that one. That was previously green for end of year performance, but there's one one resource consent, and we're working through. While we've processed all of them on time, there's one that's yet to be processed, which is not necessarily going to trigger all the positive. It's not going to trigger positive flow for us. That's where it's looking at this point in time. So just giving you a flag that that might be a measure that we may not achieve. William, mention something about that.
Oh, just, there's probably several hundred that we have processed on time and we've missed one. So, I don't think that missing one says to us that we're failing in our consent processing timeframes.
Not what I'm hearing.
In terms of the process where we're so the one result the two requirements and the flood warning system, we continue to not believe there's a systemic issue. Things happen. They shouldn't, but they do. So we just need to manage those things through. Our targets are really tight, as you know, it's 100%. You either fail or you don't, or you pass. One thing means we fail. So 85% that you can recognise is actually a good result. So that's really what I wanted to go through in any level of detail, Mr. Chair. Is there anything specifically you'd like to touch on now?
No, it's pretty right. Obviously, the Lagoima thing now, we've got it's in-house, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's not about the contract anymore.
No.
I'd like to clarify that I think, sorry, on behalf here, should be. We are still using contractors for Lagoimas as our staff get up to speed, but we will slowly transition over the next few months to having more in-house. It's likely we will still be using a contractor for complex Lagoimas because some of them have been extremely complex recently.
Oh, we got a mover and a seconder for that. Receive the report. Note the report of performance report 3. Mover. First mover. Seconder. Andy. All in favour? I think we can stop there until we lunch. I think next one probably needs to be tackled on a full stump.
Yeah.
Resolution. That's the resolution.
It's your all.
Adjourn for lunch.
Yep.
Mark's adjourns for lunch. Gonna move that.
Thank you.
Chris Garland.
Okay, what time do you want to re-adjourn?
20 minutes.
12:30? See you back here at 12:30?
Yeah.
And we're live.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody.
Go.
Welcome back, everybody, to council meeting. We're going on to section 8.4, annual plan 25-26. Stuart's going to talk to this, and the recommendation is very long. Do we want to do all this in one or try and do it in separate items? Because I would normally be separate items.
Yeah, that's logical, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Or Joe.
It's a very important topic. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And what I'm going to do is get to the report summary. Just go through to each of the sections and then come back for recommendations.
Yep.
Fantastic. So on your page 41, I want to start off with the current situation on remodeling overhead costs. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Excellent. So as you know, a long-term plan, we've put a lot of effort into understanding where the long-term plan is. And for the 25-26 financial year, we've had the opportunity to really focus in on our overhead costs to make sure they're really telling the right story. So I'm going to do this with a double act with Peter, if that's okay. This is going to give me some supporting data. But to give you a heads up, we've remodeled our overhead costs to make sure that it's correctly allocating those overheads to how we operate the business work. The proposed setting of general rate. Now, as you're all aware, in the consultation document for the long-term plan, I've got a copy of this, so it's foggy now, so I use it all the time. We said in option 1 and that we'd increase the general rates in year 1 by 27%. Now, you'll be aware through the process we went through, we set that actually at 27.18 to be accurate. Year 2, we said we would need to increase the general rates by 12%. What we're proposing is that those general rates do increase by 12%. And this is an overarching element of this. That the annual plan for 25-26 is not derogating from what we actually set out in the long-term plan for year 2. Those commitments we've made to our community, we're going to follow through on those, which is a nice segue back into what we are currently doing with our non-financials for this year. We said we're going to deliver, we are. For next year, we said we're going to set some commitments and we're going to deliver on those. So that's the proposed setting of general rates. Included with the next, obviously, is 2 other general rates. There's the capital element and there's the uniform annual general charge. Proposing that also increases by 12%. So the whole general rate as a whole increases by 12%. So that's exactly the commitment we previously gave to the community. Now, you'll note on the bottom of that page 41, council will note that this level of rates has been set, including our offset from our investment income. So as you're aware, we have an investment, and we talked about that just prior to the lunch break with Chantel and others. That investment income reduces our rate required. So the income we get from that. Was it a little bit subject to fluctuation, as you appreciate, in the world at this point in time? But yeah, that's what we're actually using to ensure that our rate requirement doesn't exceed what we previously had.
And that's in the revenue and financing policy that was agreed in the long-term plan. So we're not deviating from that, that's
Mr. Chair. Okay.
Any questions? We're going to stop there and have a question about that. I've got one question. So how much of the revenue from the income from the JB Ware is being used to offset the rates, all of it?
it's around basically 600,000 or 700,000.
You might have to speak up a bit.
Sorry.
Yes.
It might be about 600,000 or 700,000. So it depends. I mean, this year we've actually been going very well with the fund, and then in the March quarter, it's come back, and that's basically been some of the economic turmoil that's going on in the world at the moment. But basically every year we're talking about somewhere around 700,000, 700,000 of rates money that is offset by that fund interest and growth.
And to be clear, that doesn't reduce the fund. It just reduces the, I'm going to say profit. Can I say profit?
It's really the capital growth and but
Compounding.
let's be honest about this. We do that every year. We talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think the last time we took any money out of the fund was in March 2021, and in that year we took out 350,000. So each year when we do rates, we talk about having this fund that we're going to offset general rates, but we never actually draw it down from the fund, and so that just means that our daily loans grow through that process. If that's clear.
Yeah, so it would never have got used. That's if we
haven't,
collected.
we've only used it once, and that's as far as I went back anyway, which was March 2021. So other than that, it's just been growing. So it's grown about 2.6 million in the last period of time since then.
Yeah,
and that money potentially every year has been allocated to offsetting general rates, but never actually down. No.
Just on page 43.
Oh, okay.
Am I jumping ahead too much now?
Jumping ahead.
Is that okay to get to that in a minute?
Hey?
Is that okay to get to it in a minute, Councillor? Mr. Chair, shall I carry on?
Yeah, no more questions about the.
Yeah.
The reason that we compounded that interest into that fund was when I first came on, and it was whittling away down to nothing. When us as council put a stop to it and said you need to tighten your belt.
Because we wanted that back up towards the 15 million mark, which is where it's almost at.
Yes.
So then once it's there, you're actually getting something for your money. Otherwise, it's just whittling away down chump change.
And now actually it's given a benefit to the ratepayers, which is exactly what you'd expect.
Yeah.
Proposed setting of targeted rates, so emergency management in particular. So as you know, we've really got an emergency management team which is fit for purpose. There's some extra things we needed to do, and that is to support in terms of the welfare recovery side of things. So in the annual plan for next year, we've built that in. I mentioned also the overhead earlier. We've reallocated some of the overheads to more appropriately sit where they should fall. So there's a difference in what we had in 24-25 in the emergency management costs compared to what we're proposing for 25-26. And that's about 300,000 in total. So that's a specific targeted rate, and we'll come back to that as a recommendation in a minute, but keen to hear any questions, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I've got some questions. It's actually 360,000.
Yes, you are.
It was rounded down.
Rounding down doesn't work with me, I tell you.
So I'll go to 400,000, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yeah. So this isn't even 12%, obviously, though, is it? This is on top of that.
Direct.
That's all it's targeted rate,
Yeah.
which the increase from this is more than 12%.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. In the consultation, we said that we would go up by 20% for target rates in years 2 and 3. 10% for year 1 and 20% for 2 and 3. Now, as you appreciate, we didn't actually get 10% for year 1.
You might just have to speak up just a little bit more, eh? Yeah, because you got the speaker in the audio here, eh?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, we didn't actually achieve 10% as an increase in year 1, and there's some reasons for that. In year 2, we committed to a 20% rise. I haven't calculated, to be honest with that 20%, but it's a 20% overall targeted rate increase.
And this is, Alan?
Yeah, you brought up a good point. Does the 12% include the uniform annual charge, type attorney plan, and the emergency management? Is that all on top, is it?
Through Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor. So yes, the targeted rates are separate, how they're calculated, and our targeted rates traditionally include Te Tai Pūtini plan and the emergency management side of things as specific targeted rates. So yes, they're that's at that different level. So the UAGC and the general rate based on capital, they're both at the 12%, which is our previous commitment.
Yep. Just to comment, the emergency management's getting up there, 1.5 million. A lot of people will be asking what we're getting for their money.
Yes.
Considering the other district, the 3 districts do their own emergency management as well. That's a huge figure.
Thank you. Yes.
Can I make a comment on that? So I just want to remind councillors that the emergency management officers that reside in each of the districts are actually funded through this rate. So they're not paid for by the district councils, they're paid for by this targeted rate across the whole of the West Coast. Okay. And then the rest of the team, Claire and others, are also paid for out of this rate. The additional position that's flagged here, we did consult on as part of the LTP consultation, and it did come in from the Civil Defence Emergency Management Joint Committee. And if the chair was here today, he would speak to that and say, look, that's where it came from, a request to have that welfare, particularly from the experiences following the Westport flooding. We really noticed the absence of that sort of team member in the team, which is in a lot of the other civil defence teams. So the request came in from the Joint Committee for that additional resource. That was considered by council as part of your 8 or 9 sessions to consider the LTP. You decided you wanted to fund that, and it was in the consultation document, and it's supposed to be funded starting in year 2. So that's the genesis of that one. Thanks.
I don't know if I remember that, but anyway. it just seems a lot of money, one person, $360,000 increase.
That one builds, and remember Stuart talked about the fact that we're reallocating over. And so part of the reallocation of overheads is separate from the person.
Right.
So the person is gonna be somewhere in the vicinity, and I'm not gonna talk about.
Oh, no, I'm just saying, that's how the ratepayers are gonna be looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's.
So when we say reallocating of overheads, what are we reallocating?
So basically, we're taking the overheads as they exist today, we're actually, so one of the problems with the long-term plan was there was no real good understanding in-house about how those overheads were allocated.
Yeah.
And I think when you actually go to the rating set, with a rate setting, it talks about the fact that overheads were pulled out of that as part of that process. And so we never actually charged for the overheads last year from that point of view, the ones that were actually moved to the targeted rate. And so this is almost just reintroducing it back in again.
Right, so when we're talking overheads, anyone else wants to ask? Are we talking bricks and mortar, or what are we talking here?
Bricks and mortar will be part of it, so the buildings will be part of that process, and any maintenance and things that are going on within it. So it's basically, you're talking about corporate services, you're talking about information services, talking about office of the chief executive, which includes the buildings, and it also talks about what have I missed? The HR sits within office of the chief executive, so. Oh, no, vehicles are spread. So vehicles are allocated out, so they're not part of that.
Right. Any other questions from anyone? Andy?
Well, some people are gonna look at their rate demand, look at last year's and say that's not 12%, it's.
Kelly, yes, you are correct. The individual rates, invoices will vary, and they may be greater than 12% or less than 12%. The council rate requirement is the 12% figure. And it's really complex. It depends on the capital value of people's property, and that may have changed quite considerably, up or down. And obviously, we've had a revaluation of one of the districts, and so that will impact as well. So our differentiation of where we allocate those rates across the region shifts every year, as you appreciate. And so I can't say what change will be for a person. All I can say is that the general rate requirement is 12% increase for council general rate requirement, and the targeted rates vary, as they were previously committed on 20% as a targeted rate increase.
So before we set the rates, we will come back to you and provide you some examples of what they look like. So that is part of the next plan.
And explain to the rate cut.
So could I, councillors, could I just be really, really clear, I'm super clear on this. As part of our LTP for the coming year, we said 12% general rate, 12% UAG, and then we said 20% targeted rates. Am I right, Stuart?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what we said to our communities, and that's what you passed. Is it?
But it's not 20% for each targeted rate, though, is it? Possibly we thought it was going to be 20% for all of us. But here we've got 20% for this, 20% for that, 20% for that. It's starting to look like 60% to me.
Well, 20% across a number of items, correct? It's not 60%, is it? Much different
Yeah, I know, but I mean, I'm talking about the people who get their rate bills are going to be looking at this and going.
So the targeted rates are going to depend on, obviously, the rating district.
Yeah.
And what they've agreed to as far as the rating process.
Oh, well, I know that's all separate, the rating district is separate, yeah.
Because the emergency management, that'd be nearly 30%, wouldn't it?
I haven't calculated that, councillor.
From 1.218, 1,218,000 to 1,578,000. There's nearly 30 or.
No, what it just seems like getting another person on to look after the fact after that, I think they might not do anything for 5 or 10 years.
Oh, the group.
No, not having a go at you, Claire. I'm just saying Is it not, is this not a role that be absorbed into the?
Would you like to comment?
I would like to comment. Chair, so it's been several years that we've been, having a discussion around additional roles within West Coast Emergency Management to actually deliver on what the expectation is around emergency management so that we're aligned with what happens in other parts of the country. There were actually initially 2 roles that came out of the report as a result of the recent floods. And after a number of years, it was agreed that it was just 1 additional role as opposed to 2, and that role focus on welfare recovery. Recovery we do in terms of civil emergency management very poorly for the region. That's an area that's critical for us. We have a very light touch around recovery. If any of the areas across emergency management were of concern, recovery is the one. So that's partly why we've incorporated a welfare and recovery type of a hybrid role, really, that will sort of help bring us up. So that we're actually achieving and performing what the expectation is across the country. So it's not a new recommendation. It's been at the table for several years, and it was a specific recommendation that came out of the review that was conducted after the 2021 and 2022 Westport floods.
If I could just jump in and support Claire on that. The other aspect of this is the Cyclone Gabrielle reviews have highlighted the need for really good recovery planning. And currently the West Coast has virtually no recovery planning. So that's another function that this would be sitting with this role, which is has been found to be fundamental through some of the previous large events.
But all I'm asking is, it's not something that Claire and her team can do already. I mean, why do we need an extra person? I mean, how are we going to fill the day for them?
Chair, if this was a role that we could absorb, we would have already done that. This is a service that we're not delivering to our communities. The team are already at capacity. If they could, they would be the first people who would absorb that. Thank you.
Also, Councillor.
The only time they, sorry.
You go.
The only time they deliver is really after an event, isn't it? So in peacetime, is there stuff to do?
Through the chair, this is a question that I get asked quite often. And I think it's a good question that we need to be able to explain what happens when there isn't an event. So, and recovery is a really good example to be able to explain this. So there's a lot of work that has to do pre-event around how we are going to recover, how our natural environment's going to recover, the economy is going to recover, and all of those other aspects that we have across the region of the country. We need to work across each of our TAs in terms of having recovery teams prepared so that they know what they're going to do, who the resources are going to be in a recovery office. We need to understand what the mechanisms are to be able to attract central government funding. So there's a whole lot that we should be doing in preparation for when we have to recover. When we recover, and using the Westport floods as a prime example, that took too long after the event to understand what it was going to take, where the funding was going to come from, who was actually going to take ownership in terms of liability, where the resourcing was going to come from, what the vision was around recovery. That took weeks, if not months, to get in place. We need to be a lot more quicker at an event to understand what that recovery journey is going to look like, and that makes recovery a lot more efficient and a lot less painful for our affected communities. there's a lot that we need to be doing before an event.
Just wondering what our responsibilities are. If the future regional council decided to cut some costs and do away with emergency management, are we legally required to carry out this function?
Yes, yes. We are, and if I could also comment, we're currently looking at a new emergency management bill that's currently being drafted. So that's through Minister Mitchell, who, as it happens, will be in the region on Friday. So part of that is actually looking across central government, local government, and other sectors around where the responsibility falls. So there's a huge amount of interest around putting it in the right place, and the appreciation that it's a whole of community is actually responsible for delivering emergency management. At the moment, yes, it is in law that we have a responsibility through the Local Government Act.
Claire, could you also sort of talk about in the discussion document, that will feed into the new bill? I think they're talking about some new powers that the government will have
Yes.
if they're not consequences
Yeah.
for not exercising our duties and functions correctly.
Yes. So that is correct. So we've also got the privilege of having Steph Mitchie in town today and over the next couple of days, who's the new Deputy Chief Executive for NEMA. His whole job is around assurance. So it's around if a region or if a part of the country or an organisation, the central government organisation example, isn't achieving what they need to do in terms of civil defence, what is the consequence? How do we understand if they are achieving or not? Who's actually taking ownership of that audit responsibility? So in the past, if we as a region haven't come up to par, actually not a lot has happened in terms of consequence. What central government are looking at now is actually there needs to be a consequence if that's the case, and it needs to be working alongside the region in terms of supporting them to deliver what we
and so if we cut through, so one likely outcome if we just pull the funding and say we're not going to do it, it's probably commissioner time councils.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
There will be a consequence.
I don't believe you.
I just think it's a lot of money for 36,000 people with 1,000 kilometres of coastline. We could have anything up to 10,000 visitors here, and you expect all the locals to pay for it all. I mean, it's just someone's got to go to the government and say, look, that's not going to work. We can't just keep. It's very all right for the Western District Council and Buller to say you charge them. Why do we got to keep picking up the ticket all the time? I mean, you're saying it's government thing. Well, the government could be putting some money into it.
Through the chair, that is an aspect of what's being discussed at the moment in terms of the new bill. It's where does the funding fall? In a region such as ours, it has huge transitory population coming through every day, particularly tourism. Where does the cost fall? Where it's small communities, look at South Westland, they've got 200, 300, and got to have up to 3,000 tourists a night. So that is a part of the submission that we're.
If something happens in South Western, they could be cut off for a week. They're not going to get any benefit from this role we're putting together here.
They will. That is the expectation that they will get benefit, because we would have worked with them and the agencies responsible in terms of recovery and restoration. So in terms of the roading network, work with NZTA, the PowerCos, that's all the intention in how we get back up and running as quickly as possible.
I'd just like to add also that the West Coast Emergency Management Team is quite well recognised around the country for achieving a lot on a much smaller budget than many other parts of the country.
Like most of the residents.
Yes, exactly.
What's the percentage that we're discussing here? What's the percentage of the rates increase? Is this discussion? Okay.
30.
No. So 29% of it is to do with emergency management? Or is it a percent of the overall rates demand? What is it? We're debating a number. What is the number?
Separate pieces. Transfer. I mean, the general rates is the general rate plus the UAPC, and then you have these target rates.
Yeah.
So we don't look at it as a percentage overall, or we haven't done to date.
Yeah, I know, but what I'm saying is we're talking about, how much, 300 something thousand? What does that equivalent to in terms of the overall rate increase in percentage? Are we debating a percent here, or are we debating fifties? You know, are we arguing about a point, or we're arguing about a percent? That's what I want to know, because I'm sure we could be having this discussion in other areas
Come back and do it.
more important.
Yep, we'll come back and let you know what that is when we go to the next meeting.
So can I just say, councillors, it's important to note that I'm right, we're not passing the annual plan here today, right?
No.
What we're doing is we're bringing to you a paper with what you will consider at the meeting. So effectively, you're getting 2 bites of the cherry here. You can defer to make a decision on this and get some more information from us, and we'll bring it back in the next paper when you've actually got to make.
That's a good idea, because it's such a big subject.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at, I've actually worked it out on a thing. It's gonna be an extra $228 per person on the West Coast, what we're proposing. Of all the uniform annual charges and all the other stuff.
That's on top of.
No, that's what the new lot of rates is gonna come out. For every person on the West Coast, it's gonna be $228. So if you've got 5 kids, look out.
5 kids. That looks quite allocated that way, but anyway. Yeah.
Well, but that's how I work it out. I mean, that's how you work it out. I don't know what the rating units are. So you work it out to whatever the rating unit is. And if someone's got 4 or 5 properties, it could be quite a lot. It could be substantial. I just feel we need a lot more information than what we're getting here about what's going on. I've got no problem with clear and emergency management, but it's we've got to justify it to people. When the people come up to us in the supermarket and say, hey, you know, we got this dumped on us by them. It's the same with the TTP. We get it all dumped on us by the other councils, but we're the face that cops it in the supermarket. You know, and a lot of this needs to be explained a whole lot better to the ratepayer. I feel
I mean, part of that should have been through the consultation process.
it probably should have been, but you've been to workshops. You know, we're all got our own businesses. He's only half there, you know. That's not good to say, but I mean that's how it is sometimes at the end of a long day. Any other comments from the council? I've had.
Well, I think we can take those sentiments on board and we'll come back with some more information and we can have a second debate. I think at this point, shall we move on through the paper and consider the next points so we can know what we need to come back to when we do come back and if there's more information that we want.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I just think it needs to be broken down more so that we can actually see what it all is per rating unit or whatever, because it's I know we did it in the long-term plan, but
No, that's fine. We said we'd do some rates up as part of the next process. So that's certainly part of the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With the rating district schemes, so councillors you're all aware of what we've discussed with them, and we're proposing to follow through on that commitment. I don't think there's probably
the council will go through that anyway.
They will. There's a separate paper committee on that. The next one's really interesting. Now, this is about how we do our loan repayments for our capital works. Now, we've had a bit of an interestingly different approach, or inconsistent approach with our loan repayments previously. Sometimes it's been at the start of the capital project, and sometimes it's been when it's complete. So what I'm recommending here is that we take a more strategic approach and consistent approach so that the community has got certainty on what's going to happen. So we'll come back to the recommendation on that, and I know you all would have read it, but in fact, there's 2 approaches we've historically taken. Let's get it down to 1, so we're actually giving our community confidence. Te Tai Putini plan. Actually, do you want to talk about the increase in the interest rate?
Yeah, so basically with So the TTPP has a line, right? So yeah, and it's getting to a reasonably large number. Obviously, the cost of TTPP has risen quite a lot over this year. And you'll see that when we talk to corporate services around basically the results, and we've seen that I think a little bit earlier on in the December report. So it should be nothing new. So with that loan, we're basically saying in the rating side, we want to include the interest cost of that loan as part of the TTPP rate when it gets charged to the ratepayer. And so that just gets that process underway and gets that in the system. Because we don't feel that the general ratepayer should have to pay for that. It's a separate piece. And it should be allocated in that way rather than just getting the water back otherwise. So that's what we want to do with it. In the past, we've just rated a number and haven't necessarily included the interest. We're suggesting that adding the interest in is a better way of doing it. Starts the process of getting that paid back.
So that's principal rate, interest.
Yes, is that correct? There's a little bit of principal, but because it's spread, it's meant to be intergenerational TTPP. Yeah. But it's just the interest cost as well put into there.
It's a generational, that's not the part where they get signed off, is it?
Yeah.
So how long term?
I think I've told them it's 10 years or more. It's more than 10. I'll have to come back to you and tell you. I don't have it in my head.
Well, I think it's a good idea to pay the interest off, because otherwise it's just will go on forever, but once again, it probably needs to be explained somehow. What, when we put the rates around that, why and what for?
Yeah, there could be a letter that goes with the rates.
So, councillors, I'll just remind you all that when we do strike the first rates demand, it gets accompanied by the rates newsletter.
Yeah, that's
right.
right.
And that's where we'd put it, eh?
Yeah. Well, I know normally we just put glossy things about what's happened, but there's never a breakdown of where their dollar's going, you know?
Yeah, okay. Very happy to Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Do you want to start or do you like to start?
Debt.
Yeah.
I'm going. So we've had a council briefing on debt recently. So when you think about the debt for the regional council, we've got about, and we'll just think about it from 23-24 report. So there was 17.65 million of debt at that time. There was a view that, so when you think about debt, we think about internal debt and basically what we're doing with regards to the rating district. So they're two separate things. And the rating district debt was probably overestimated in that report. So basically we've come to the point where we've got $10 million worth of debt sitting in the 17.65, and there's about 7.65 worth of debt that relates to rating district loans that we've taken. So that's how we sort of allocate between the two. The debt has risen from around $3 million in about 2019, $10 million at the end of 24. So that's where things have gone. We also think about the mining bonds. We've got about $4.5 million worth of mining bonds. We've got about $1 million of that on call and various term deposits and bits and pieces. But the balance of the rest of that, as we discussed last time, has been utilised. And the prudent reserves that relate to the rating have also been utilised. So from a loan point of view, we've minimised the amount of loans that we've taken for the council over time, and we've used up the other funds to run the business. So that's what we talked about last time. So that's basically where we're at. So that just means that we, in theory, incur a higher interest cost to the general ratepayer versus what would have been charged in the past. And because you've only got basically the general ratepayer or the rating districts to charge that loan interest to. So that's the debt piece. Happy to take any questions.
Questions?
That was a good way of putting it, utilising it.
I'm a little, through the chair, I'm a little bit uneasy about using the bond money for slush fund because it's not really our money. It's actually the clients or the miner or whoever put up the original bond. And if they ever say decided to close up shop and recall their bond and they've done their rehab, they should be entitled to get all of that money back. If we had a run of those sort of people, all of a sudden we could find ourselves in a position where we.
So councillor, the staff agree with you wholeheartedly, and that was always what was intended.
Yeah.
And our practice going forward is not to utilise that as cash on hand and to reserve that for bonds. But I also want to say that going forward, we're much more minded for especially for the larger bonds for that to be a surety with the bank rather than us to take the deposit.
Yeah.
But going forward, we want to ring fence that money, but that was not the policy of past leadership of the council in
I think you
previous
talked about millions thereabouts.
Yeah, and now we're dealing with that legacy.
Yeah.
Okay, and what Peter is saying is in dealing with that legacy, that comes at an interest cost, which the general ratepayer has to bear, because the general ratepayer had the benefit of receiving that money to buffer rates in the past. Thanks.
I've got nothing more to add at this stage.
No.
Sobering.
So, yeah, so what we,
Well, from now on, we have names, don't
what's the plan to pay all this back then?
Oh,
Was it?
Huh?
Well,
No, I mean, there's got to be a plan. You've got to have a plan.
Okay, so councillors, the plan was, and we need to reassess this obviously next year in year 3, but the plan was to, an LTP was to set the rate rises, both general and targeted, over the 10-year period, with some big hikes at the beginning of the 10-year period, tailing off down to 6.75% as we head out to year 10. And if we followed that income profiling and we hit our income targets on our revenue with consents compliance and made sure we build out, to the LTP requirements around that, those sorts of things, and recoveries from the engineers back onto the schemes, that we would return to cash surplus in year 4. And between years 4 and 10, we would start paying off debt. So that was the plan. Okay. What's happened though is as we bid in more for before the deluge money and other things, we are incurring more debt, but that debt is ring fenced onto the targeted rates. But just remind councillors, and I really can hear the late Frank Dooley's voice here now. Year 4, starting cash surpluses, we start to pay that debt.
So how long it takes us to pay back that debt is another question, because obviously when we set the LTP, and I don't want to be negative, when we set the LTP a couple of years ago, we probably had a different view on what the debt situation was.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know, did we?
We didn't know.
We didn't know.
No, well, there you go.
Well, the TPP
So there's
things
probably a little bit
explained.
more work to be done just to set out how long it's going to take. us to do that.
We didn't know within 6 years ago either. I think what really is your wording here, unallocated. That's not a correct word.
Well, it means I can't find a home for it other than council.
General rate.
Yes.
So should we call it general rate funded debt?
Yeah, something like that,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, no, we can do that.
When you say unallocated, it sounds like you've lost it at the couch.
That's what you need to do.
And then this debt has been growing since years ago, basically.
So yes. We'll certainly be the
So, yeah.
So your guess it's probably going back, what, 10 years, something? Is it
That's the one.
probably longer?
It's been a long time since the council funded through its revenue and rating sources, its operating expenses.
I know where the money could come from. DWC. You got almost $150 million sitting there doing nothing. That was used to retire council debt. Everybody on the West Coast would get some benefit. It's not actually doing anything for the people of the West Coast at the moment. Keeping about 20 people in.
Anyone else got any comments? Francois, you got any?
I'm liking what Alan's
Some jewels of wisdom?
It's been down that track with TDPP and still down that track. Makes good sense. Yeah.
Can we move on?
Yeah, we can move on, yeah.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chair. That is really complex. So thank you very much for your feedback on it. And what I'm hearing is that you'd like some more information to tell a compelling story to our community. So what? So
Yeah.
what are we actually changing? What are they?
Yeah.
So where we're at, we need to be honest. We're honest with the people, and the people will support us.
Yeah.
We try and hoodwink them, they'll just turn on us.
Absolutely.
That's what West Coast people are like.
We are not trying to hoodwink anyone. We're trying to be open, honest, and really put everything out there.
And that's the same with clear stuff. People gotta see what this person's gonna be doing. You know, and what they're doing now. I mean, whether we can get some sort of a little thing out, this is our civil defence. This is what we're doing. Because a lot of the people don't know, it's just a build book. Until they need it, of course.
So, Mr. Chair, look, I've suggested that we're delivering on our commitments and what was said previously.
Yep.
I absolutely hear you, that what we're not telling is that compelling story, so what? So we need to do better on that, and that's something we're going to be coming back to. There's some recommendations on your page 40. Would it be appropriate to go through those recommendations now?
Yep.
How would you like to do this? Would you like me to read them?
Is this what we're coming back to, you getting us some more information?
That would be an additional one.
This would be another additional thing.
Yeah. And of course, you can refer.
Ask everybody else, what's everybody else want to do? You want to do all these at one, recommendations, or do them individually?
Individually, I think.
Yeah, everyone happy with that?
Yeah. What was that?
The recommendations on page.
Yeah, you can do them all at once or together. You can do them separately.
Separately.
You can do them one at a time.
Well, you received the report, obviously. You want me to read them out?
Would you like me to, Mr. Chair? Okay.
One, receive the report. All those in favour of that? We'd have to move and second each all of them?
Well, if you're going to do them individually, yes, you do.
Right, we'll do them individually.
As well.
Going to move it for that? Receive the report? Move it. Seconded, Andy? Okay, all in favour. Note the Local Government Act requires the annual plan to be prepared for 25-26. Well, someone want to move that? Mark moves it, seconded Andy. Note the result of there being no significant change proposed to the year 2 plan set out in the long-term plan 24-23 that there is no requirement for public consultation. We agree with that? If that's true, in fact, we'll all agree with that, won't we? We've Mark, seconded Andy. Agree on the proposal the council general rates requirement increases by 12% both for the per capita value element and the universal annual charge element. So we're just going to be clear on this. It's going to be, you're saying it's 12% for each one, or for both?
Combined, it's 12%.
Combined is 12% for the, right? You're going to move it for that? Chris, seconded. That you, Francois? Okay. Andy, right. Was it favour?
Vote me against, please. Report me against number 4.
Number 4?
Yeah.
Number 5, agree to the increase in targeted rate requirements associated with the emergency management, which enables the recruitment of welfare response role and the allocation of overheads associated with the team.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a recommendation, given the previous discussion, that you let that lie on the table?
Yeah.
And you'll wait further information to come back at a subsequent paper?
Yeah, we did.
One pass it, okay. Agree that targeted rates associated with the maintenance of rating district schemes are principle applied as proposed for the rating district meetings as per the rating district recommendation. Can we that? I'll second it. All those in favour, that's all. 7, agree to apply a consistent approach for the repayment of loans for the rating district schemes that being part of the loan repayment commences on completion of each project. All those in favour?
Yep.
I'll move Chris, second Alan, all those in favour?
Yep.
Okay, agree to increase the targeted rate requirements for the TTPD plan to include repayment of interest on the existing loan. Got a mover for that? Mark, seconded Andy, all those in favour?
Put me against.
Again?
Yeah.
It's got to be paid back, I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
Anyway. Note the current debt position. Is that what it- mover for that one? Andy? It is Alan. Yeah. Right. Note the draft annual plan 25-26 will be presented to council on the 30th June. Yeah. All in favour of that?
Now, who did that?
I'll move Chris. Zoom.
We did so quick.
I'm moving number 10.
Yeah.
Seconded
I'll second it.
Alan seconded.
Okay, thank you, councillor.
it. Did you want to add something else about it?
So we're just leaving number 5 out, is it?
Yeah. For more information.
So, okay,
I think
That'd be
we'll
like
take
an
that as an
action point.
action
action,
point.
right, thank you.
So there's 9 agreed upon,
So
one's an action point, number
Yep.
5.
And I think the action point, just to try and get to the words there, is to develop a document that clearly explains to the public the annual plan that we're looking to adopt on the 3rd of June and any increases in general or targeted rates.
Okay, thank you.
If we can just include those ticket items there, what the still be feats and
Yeah.
what the new role is going to be, and why it's been done, and because of cyclone Gabriel, you know, just but people need information.
Give us.
Thank you.
Well, I move on to the next one. If you can show you what it is.
Page 46, isn't it?
Place in the Raft Creek. Place in the Raft Creek district into abeyance. Yep. Recommendation was another business. 15 this time, Chris.
So, Mr. Chair, if I could speak to this one actually, because, and I just want to really acknowledge you, Chairman, for coming to the meetings with Rough Creek and that. But yes, there is a bit of a list of recommendations here for you to consider. But what I can say to you is that these recommendations have been agreed with that rating district and are all in order with the meeting that we had. And they are expecting this today. So this is we're not doing anything to them. We've done it with them and an agreement with them. And this is the arrangement that we had a really good meeting with the Rough Creek to put it into abeyance for a couple of years and see how we go and with these recommendations. So I think, Mr. Chairman, on that basis, you could actually move them as a block.
Block?
Yeah.
I'll move.
Move on. Second, Andy, you at the middle?
Yep.
How are you? Okay, all those in favour?
All right.
Mr. Dillon is going to take up the responsibility of this or the consent.
Consent.
Do you
Have those? Oh, I don't think it's much. It's fascinating. It's pretty much done. Rating that we're happy with. The only thing I would remember was the thing that we're going to leave $10,000 in, but I can see the sense of it.
That's correct.
And so they're not paying any targeted rates anymore, are they?
Not for this.
So,
If they have any other targeted rate elements such as the targeted meeting, retaining, etc. Yeah.
anyone else got any discussions on that? Next one is
Yeah.
adoption. 78.
Adoption of the revised joint committee terms of reference. This is for all rating districts, right? So all the
Westport and Grey.
What page?
Hoki and Friends have been done.
79, 78. Strange.
Hoki and Friends have been done.
Okay, so I'll speak to this, Mr. Chairman. So the Friends, Joseph and the Grey terms of reference are already in place, signed off, done and dusted. We're bringing to you two new altered terms of reference for Hoki and Westport. And both of those terms of references have been endorsed by the relevant joint committees.
Greymouth.
Sorry, I got it wrong. So Greymouth and Westport. They've both been endorsed by their relevant joint committees. But as per our requirements, this table is the ultimate decider on that. They are our joint committees. But they come to you with the endorsement of both committees. Thanks.
So the recommendations are to receive the report, endorse and adopt the following revised documents. A, the Westport Rating District Joint Committee Terms of Reference, 2nd of April 25. B, the Greymouth Rating District Joint Committee Terms of Reference, 19th of February 25. And once adopted by council, all terms of reference will be included in the council delegations.
I can move A.
A.
We go.
Westport Rating District 1.
Yeah. Let me go with trading.
We'll just put them all in one lump,
No?
Yeah.
All right, I'll move that.
Before we do, just one further comment from me. I think at two successive Tautaka joint committee meetings, we've had a request from community members to have community representation on that joint committee.
Yeah.
And so that's something I think doesn't fit your resolution today, but it's just something I'm asking you to note for the next review and consider putting in place next time.
So I really couldn't move B on that one, could I?
It's just one big lump. But
Should be separated though.
is it only the Westport, the Hokitika one that wants people on it? Greymouth isn't.
We've had no request from Greymouth community members to have community representation. Doesn't mean that it's not something addressed at some point in the future.
We'll put them all together, 1, 2 and 3. Got a mover for them?
Yep.
Mark, seconded, Alan, all in favour?
Nearly halfway, Andy.
Through the chair, on the rating district, when do we decide or as a new member for the new
The new chip, person from the community member, the new community member?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I guess it's up to Paula to make the recommendation first.
So that will come to the next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yeah. That's,
Pardon?
papers are being written now for Paula and us. Okay.
No, we've done that.
We're up to page 99.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Well, we're due to meet the end of this month. Okay. Council will be-
Yeah, mate. And then it'll be about 3 months, isn't it? The new one. They must do elections.
Fancy the game.
The meeting, yeah, it's probably hardly worthwhile giving you. There's only one meeting anyway, between now and
We have a meeting between now and getting elected.
I don't think there is, as we do. Paula.
I suspect we might have to, before October, have another meeting. So I would recommend that we proceed with that appointment.
So community members would change with the councils, would they? The community members will stay the same.
Yeah, they would, wouldn't they? It's just-
Put the rules and get, so we have to go through the process of appointing them.
Yeah, but well, of all the other rating districts, the members stay the same with the
Okay.
councils change. So if you appoint someone before the election, he would still be there after the election.
Okay.
Okay. Updated We're up to page 99, updating council terms of reference, remuneration employment committee. Recommendations to receive the report. Approve the appointment of councillor Chris Cole to the remuneration employment committee. And update part B council committees of the delegation members accordingly. So that's what it's
Pretty straightforward.
pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Somebody want to move that? Right. Move no. Second move. Andy. Over.
Against,
Against.
True.
Well, against.
Yeah,
it.
got it.
Yep. Righto, moving right along. Merger of the Franz Joseph and Lower Waiho rating district.
There you go.
I'm back. Peter, you're back. So the recommendations, I guess we've all read it. A lot of it's probably not new to anybody. Anybody? Anything new in here that they had people haven't decided about? Most of the people that weren't at the meeting. I mean, probably Alan and Andy at the meetings. Daryl. So, okay, we'll recommend to the council resolve, receive the report and note the attachments. Note that the recommendation of the Franz Joseph Joint Committee to move the current low, previous Lower Waiho rating district to the current Franz Joseph rating district. And agree to the move for loan effective from 1st of July 2025. Well, it's probably quite clear in there that we brought this up at the meetings down there, and the joint committee down there has agreed to it. So we're only enforcing it. Endorsement.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so we're not going to change the map that's down there. There's a map which has got A and B on it. We can read that as it is.
Yep.
But basically take the Lower Waiho loan and merge it in with the loan that we're going to have out of stage one.
Yeah.
Because there will be one out of that this year, and that will then end up being rated for next year as part of that process.
I was quite surprised by how easily it went through, actually.
Not for that one, because the meeting was on 29th of August. So that's the one that actually did bring that in.
So we're going to move it, Andy. Second Alan. All those in favour?
Thank you.
Just attachment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just. That makes the agenda possible.
General business. Yes. Anyone got any general business? We'll discuss.
I'd just like to bring up about the delays to fixing the rating district complex. But do we put that on the agenda for the risk insurance meeting? Bring it up here.
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you have a quick discussion about it? You might want to highlight what happened, Andy, so that everyone knows. Well, has everybody seen Andy's email?
yes.
You seen it?
Yep.
You seen it, Chris?
Well, like a week before Easter, the area engineer, they were doing asset management surveys, and there's some damage on the Percy Bank, and I was there with Wayne, and I said, well, I think this needs fixing and needs to be put on the urgent list. So a week went by, and then Wayne rang up and said, no, it looks like we'll have to get a consent to fix it. It was a 30-metre, be a bit of gravel bank in between.
Yeah, I did read that.
And so Wayne said, well, it looks like we'll have to get a consent for it, and it doesn't look like it's urgent. And I said to Wayne, well, I don't know about this. So we waited over Easter and we got 64 millimetres of rain at home. And once it flooded, we seeded. Well, it was only fresh, really. We'd lost a metre of that gravel bank. So then we had to get onto it, and thankfully there's some common sense seen and we got it fixed. But if we keep that carry on up, we're gonna be in serious strife on our rating districts. And also the Tirramacao Stop Bank, the locals there said, you know, there's a 150-metre stretch of that's slow and we'd like to see that built up. Well, that's been going on since February and I don't think anything's been done there yet. And I mean, surely we don't have to get new consents for every bit of new work like that. Surely that can be covered under the maintenance or the 10% increase you're meant to be able to do. Under
Well, it's down. I honestly think I agree with you,
Yeah,
Andy.
so Mr. Chairman, can I just say, look, I think in hindsight, this should have got on, because you know the river, especially in that location very well, you knew what could happen even in a line of fresh. What you predicted did happen, and I think the staff have gone through a learning experience there around the force of that river and what can happen, and needing to move on to things a lot quicker, especially for capital work, which the local landowners, you know, pay for. It's not on the scheme. So I think that you know, yeah, I think there's a learning there, and I would hope that they're a lot more responsive on that in the future. I think the Tirramacao one is a slightly different matter, because what we're looking to do on the Tirramacao is not fix and maintenance, but increase the level of service by putting height on 150 metres of bank. And look, the chair, Peter, was wanting to go through this and a number of other things in a meeting with you all next week, and asked whether we could hold that over till then, so the two apologies, you know, today, Peter and Peter, could be present for that discussion.
Is the proposal to raise the stop bank above what the original design
Yeah.
was, or is it just to bring it back to what the original design was?
No, it's
That's the thing, because we don't know, because the river cross sections have not been done, so no one really knows.
because the scheme doesn't want to do the cross sections.
They do. They've been asking for months.
It's a model I understood.
No, they have not. I don't want to argue with you, but they've been asking for the last 2 years. They've been asking for cross sections. Alan's been at all the meetings with us, and they've been asking for cross sections, and it hasn't happened.
So
Just to let me finish that. We need to know as a thing what we can do. Like, we all know you're allowed to add 10%. You're allowed to put the wall back to where it was under general maintenance. That's all correct, right? So if we don't know what that rule is, but they can tell by the river level that that bit's high and that bit's high. We don't know what's slumped, if the sand's fallen out of the rock wall or whatever, where that's dropped. But if once upon a time it was there and it's not there anymore, well, that's, to me, is showing that it's slumped or something. And I don't really see why you need a consent to repair something that was already there. Because that's what it comes down to, the way I look at it.
Okay, so the question that you're asking, because again, I'm just mindful of the request that I've had from Peter and Peter to be present. But the request that you're asking for is clarity on whether the proposed works on the Tirramacao flood bank over the 150 metres in our land and water plan requires consent.
Yes.
That's the question. And
Well,
a clear explanation on that. Reinstate.
To reinstate it back to what it was.
Yeah, so in a situation, say like Andy's, if he was to go out there and do that repair back to what it was before a fresh, there's no way he's going to get in trouble if it's put back to the state it was. Is that correct?
If you're reinstating what was there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's permitted.
Just as long as he gets permission.
No, it's permitted activity. You don't need permission. You just go and reinstate. However, what I would say is that the next part of that is that as part of the regional council owning the flood banks and all the liabilities and other things that go with it, the area engineer should be aware and almost sign off on the material and what the fix to the maintenance will be, even though it doesn't need a consent, so that we can update our asset management records.
Because it is actually,
It's a regional.
the road scheme bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was lacking rock and it's, the river was hitting between two.
So you had to introduce product to it?
But it's because there's no rock there, that's a maintenance scheme.
Yep.
It's actually capital works.
Well, it's almost emergency capital works, isn't it?
So if I just go through that, so with capital works, so the Wanganui is unique.
Yeah.
Of all of our schemes,
Yeah.
because it's only a maintenance scheme. So when it's capital works, the terms of reference for that scheme say, capital works, the cost of any capital works are borne by the landowner or landowners that are gonna get the benefit of that capital, right?
Yep.
So if you break down what the costs are of the capital, right, of doing that capital works.
Yeah.
If there is a consent that's required.
Yeah.
Then that goes on to the capital and the landowner's got to bear that cost, even though we could help them prepare that and probably do it for them.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the material, there's design, material, and then, and any survey or whatever. So all of that's got to be borne by the owner or the beneficiaries, because it could benefit multiple properties. And all of that needs their signature on a form before we will proceed to do that, by obviously a guarantee for the money.
Yep.
But in terms of organising contractors and that, given it's self-funded, our procurement rules and other things don't apply. If Andy wants to go and source his own contractor, which I'm sure he does, then over to you, Andy.
You know someone?
Chantal,
Thank you. Thank you. Daryl's covered it. I was just going to remind everybody in the room that when capital works are undertaken at Wanganui, we need to have agreement and the predefined split of percentage in terms of who's going to pay for what and in what, percentage with the landowners.
And again, the last reminder about the Wanganui scheme is the scheme rules say that if there is a piece of capital works that's undertaken by landowners at their own expense, as long as those works stand up and are in good order, then after 2 years, they come back into the scheme as part of scheme asset and are taken over by the scheme for maintenance. And so that would then say that the scheme spokesperson or committee needs to sign off on that as well. Because at the end of the day, they inherit that after 2 years and have to look after it for maintenance.
Like it'd be just good for the engineers to have the authority to, if they need to.
So just what that there, like Andy's point of example here, it had never had rock there before.
No, the spur was there.
The spur was there, so you put rock back in.
Yeah.
So would he need a retrospective consent for that? Because it's not exactly the same as what it was. You replaced it with gravel.
So what we've deemed in this case is that hey, there was a potential risk to property and things.
Yeah.
So we invoked 330 of the Resource Management Act with emergency provisions, and within 20 working days, the area engineer needs to work with Andy and get a consent into the organisation to just do the paperwork around that.
Right. And just to try and clear up matters here, if the area engineer went down there and said, Andy, you need to put a little bit more rock, would Andy have to carry on and do?
That's where the area engineer has got to provide the design advice, and if the landowner, take Andy out of it, if the landowner doesn't take the area engineer's advice, then the area engineer's got to go to the spokesperson and say the landowner doesn't want to do it to the right specifications that I think is correct, and hey, you're at risk here, spokesperson, because you could be allowing this work to go ahead, and then in 2 years when it comes across, you could be inheriting a lemon, so to speak.
Well, everybody.
And that's why they had the 2-year rule, because quite often new works will settle.
Yeah.
And all need topping up, so.
It's very logical.
Yeah, hopefully that'll happen in 2 years.
So it's up to the capital works who funds it to maintain that work over 2 years to prove that it's settled and performing before it comes back into the scheme.
And that's why the scheme's in debt, because too much capital works was done under maintenance, really. Should have really been capital works, a lot of that work.
Righto. Any more questions on that? Anyone happy with that? Right up. Move on, let's into general business, any other general business? No. Go to public excluded. Oh,
Thanks, Dave.
Recommendations, public be excluded from the following part for a second meeting, only two items, 11 to 13 or. So, second.